A first now for a Republican in Congress in 10 years. A GOP congressman has introduced a bill that, if passed and signed into law, would fight carbon emissions by putting a price on them. A carbon tax, introduced by a Republican lawmaker. The bill from the Florida congressman and House Ways and Means Committee member Carlos Curbelo would eliminate the gas tax and create a tax on carbon emissions instead. For years, scientists have confirmed the connection between the increasing amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere and climate change. Humans produce a lot of carbon emissions, mostly by burning fossil fuels, including coal, oil, and natural gas. And that is causing climate change around the world. Congressman Curbelo joins us now live from Capitol Hill. Congressman, thank you.
Shepard, it's good to be with you.
This has no chance. What's the point?
Well, we think it's an innovative solution that will, number one, help the president deliver on his commitment to renewing America's infrastructure. This bill would invest $800 billion in new American infrastructure, roads, bridges, seawalls for coastal communities, public transportation systems. It also repeals discriminatory taxes, as you just said, the gas tax, which hurts lower and middle income Americans the most, those who cannot afford to buy fancy electric vehicles. And it also repeals the aviation fuel tax, which hurts travelers. And it recognizes that there's a cost to carbon dioxide emissions. So we want to put this solution out there to have this discussion, to encourage Republicans and Democrats to help address some of these big challenges facing our country. Our poor infrastructure that requires major investment, something that the White House has supported, and for coastal communities like mine, where we're seeing higher sea levels, saltwater intrusion that threatens our drinking supply, coral bleaching hurting our reefs, which are so important to South Florida and to fish stocks. This will also help because it'll reduce carbon dioxide emissions. And by the way, Shepard, this beats the emissions reductions goals that were in the Paris Agreement that the United States withdrew from. So this is truly an American solution to a number of great challenges that we face as a country and that the world faces.
The congressman represents Florida's 26th district. That's all the Florida Everglades, a sliver of southwest Miami-Dade, parts really where Andrew hit back in the day, and then all of the Florida Keys. Is this popular down there given local situations?
Well, you can imagine, Shepard, sea level rise is a big problem when you live near the sea and at about sea level. And for my constituents in the Florida Keys, in Miami, and many other millions of people who live in South Florida and in other low-lying areas in South Carolina and Louisiana, this is a major issue. We want to be able to continue living in these wonderful parts of the world, but if we're going to do so, we really have to pay attention to this issue of rising sea levels, what it means for our future, and if we can at the same time invest in American infrastructure, repeal taxes that discriminate against lower and middle income Americans, and deregulate the economy, because that's something else that this bill does. It imposes a moratorium on EPA regulation of CO2 emissions. We think this it represents a number of big wins for our country and can really bring Republicans and Democrats together to address these major challenges that we face.
Congressman, what do you say to other Republicans who are climate science deniers?
Look, what I'll tell them is, for me, this isn't some philosophical or academic issue. I live in South Florida. It's a low-lying area. We're seeing that sea levels are rising. We're seeing ocean acidification, which is a direct result of higher carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere, and it's affecting our livelihood. It's hurting our way of life. It's hurting our economy, and we want a solution that respects the economy, will allow for economic growth, will repeal discriminatory taxes, invest in American infrastructure, and secure the future. I think we're all environmentalists, Shepard. No one that I know wants to hand off an unhealthy, dirty planet to future generations. I tell many of my conservative colleagues, a lot of us talk about the dangers of the national debt and how unfair it is to leave a large fiscal debt that burdens and saddles future generations, younger Americans. It's equally immoral and irresponsible to leave an environmental debt to future generations of Americans. So that's why we've come up with this solution,
right,
and we're trying to get more support from both sides of the aisle.
Well, you're not going to get it from the Republican side. I know you have one Republican co-sponsor. Is the reason for that, the stated reason, the one given by others in your party who say climate science is not real, it's not a priority in the United States? Or is the real reason that their votes on the issue are bought and paid for by big oil?
Well, the first thing I'll tell you, Shepard,
It's a straight-up question. I'd like to have the answer.
Well, you brought up 2 points, and the first thing I'll tell you is there are a lot of Republicans who, although they have not yet signed on to this legislation, which was just introduced yesterday, they are interested in it. They're asking questions. They're intrigued. They think it's an interesting solution. They're at least considering it. When it comes to the main reason why I think a lot of Republicans haven't wanted to engage in this issue is that a lot of Republicans, due to the polarization in our politics, reflexively think that they have to disengage anytime this issue of the environment comes up, that it's not a real challenge when all of the science and people who come from areas where we're seeing the effects can guarantee that it absolutely is. Now, I'm not going to question the integrity of colleagues and whether or not they do it because of political contributions. I think everyone should be willing to answer questions about why they accept certain political contributions. But I think the main reason that we have such a big partisan divide on this issue is that for many years, Republicans have almost been trained to just refuse to engage on this issue. I think some of it is related to the fact that Al Gore adopted this cause on his own 15 years ago. I kind of wish he would have done it with a Republican, because there's a legacy of partisan division and gridlock on this issue. What we're trying to do is to close the partisan divide.
Congressman Curbelo, good luck. Thank you. It's nice to talk to you.